I grew up in a really small town in Minnesota called New London, and we went to a really small church on the edge of town. My parents are Christians. My dad helped in the worship team. My mom taught Sunday school and brought meals to the potluck, and they did all the things. And I think my mom told me that she got sort of a letter or a little postcard thing home, a note from the Sunday school teacher when I was 4 years old that said, "Today Brady accepted Christ into his heart," or accepted Jesus into his heart, or something like that. And so I kind of grew up in the church, honestly, what that means, I guess, to me is that I went to a place that was called church a lot of times a week. And then I think in my teens, I sort of always had this interest in spirituality. I had this interest in just the deeper meaning of life, and some sort of obsession with God or the divine or reality. And I think I began a journey to really try to discover what that was. Really hit me about age 16, and that sort of set me on this course, this pursuit that has looked a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And this moment, it looks way different than when it started. But I still have this curiosity, this openness towards life and the divine and the mystery of it all.
Awesome. So in terms of, let's just say like faith in your family, when those things started shifting, did it ever affect your family dynamic?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I feel like I've always been the one in my family that sort of pioneered different expressions or pursuits within Christianity. So I went off to college, and partway through college I stumbled into sort of the charismatic world. After growing up in a very conservative, small town, evangelical Christianity. And I think the introduction of the charismatic world to my parents was a bit scary. My mom sort of embraced it with a little bit of skepticism. I don't know if you embrace and have skepticism at the same time. My dad was a bit more open to it. But you know the thing also about when you're in your early 20s, you actually think that you understand the world and everything. You have a few experiences, and you, at least I believed that I had found this secret to like the greatest thing ever, and that everybody had to know and believe and agree with everything that I thought or the way they understood God and Christianity. And so I think that was obviously off-putting, you know, and I think I see it now. But it was for me, it was a lot of young zeal, a lot of just youthful passion around a new experience, a very tangible experience with God. I had some moments, some what people might call mystical experiences that were really life-changing for me in really powerful ways. And I think I would name them differently now than what I did when I was in my early 20s, but the fruit of those experiences I still feel today.
Yeah, we were talking to Science Mike about that. I don't know if you're familiar with Science Mike, but you know, he has had some similar experiences, and I think that wrestling too, where you know it's undeniable to you. It's like you try to even articulate to someone else, it almost sounds stupid. You're just kind of like, you weren't there, you don't really know, but it was real to me, and you kind of, you know, just almost kind of like, well, I don't really know any way to describe it.
Yeah, it can be hard.
Yeah, and I feel like there's so many times that it happens. These might happen few and far between. That it's like that wrestling. Some people are like, well, was it God? Was it not God? Was it you? Like Science Mike said, was it brain cancer?
Totally.
Yeah, there's all these things. And where you are now, because I know we are in a season and a culture of Christianity where we see a lot of people chasing that. It's like we chase the expression, you chase the manifestation, we chase the goosebumps, the mountaintop, whatever, because we've all experienced it. I mean, I had a lot of zeal growing up too, so I know what that is all about. And do you feel like it's actually maybe detracting people from actually experiencing God, chasing those things, or do you feel like it's, you know, good, bad? What thoughts on that?
I don't think I could say that any expression of Christianity is either good or bad. I think there are different expressions for different seasons of life. I also think wrapped up in different expressions of Christianity or church, wrapped up in those expressions are certain paradigms that can help people grow. And then there are times, I think, when you get to a point where you need to graduate.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard sometimes to understand. Like, I used to be a very black and white, hey, this is right, this is wrong. This is a doctrine about the cross that I'm going to agree with because that one's wrong. Or this is an expression of church that is better or worse or whatever. And I do believe that there are different narratives, better narratives and not as helpful narratives, but within Christianity. But I think there's also kind of grades, and that's kind of weird to talk about, but you know, in the school system, you go to first grade so you can get done with first grade, and you go to second grade so you go to third grade, you go to fourth grade. And I think different expressions help people in different seasons of their life. The problem comes, I think, when a certain expression of church or Christianity that helped you no longer helps you. And sort of the thing that spoke life or felt amazing or helped you grow closer to God no longer, the drug no longer works like how it used to. And you try to find, like, well, what's wrong with me, or what's wrong with this thing. And you know, I've found in my life, when I get to that point, oftentimes I thought there was something wrong out there, but I think it was actually an invitation from life, for God, to actually grow and transcend and change and evolve and to think differently, and to find a new gateway into the experience of the divine. So the hard part in the church is when you sort of, I've experienced, when you sort of begin to disagree with what's happening around you, or maybe you don't even disagree, maybe you just realize it's not for you anymore, and you sort of go, hey, I gotta get out of here, because it's actually not helping my development as a human. Even my spiritual development. The hard part is when you leave. I think a lot of people in leadership I've experienced sort of very suspicious.
Yeah.
And they don't have a lot of terms for it. So they'll say this person's backslidden, or this person left the church, or this person is out from underneath the covering.
Right.
And they better be careful because God might no longer protect them. The roof is taken off from over their heads. You know, they're no longer in submission to authority. And those ideas are really interesting. They can be very toxic ideas. And but the truth is, here's the truth. The narrative of Christianity is growing, and it's evolving, and it's changing. The expression of Christianity is growing and evolving and changing. And the narratives that won't hold water, meaning the ones that actually can't endure, they will die. And I think what we're seeing in America, what we're seeing in the Western world today, is a version of Christianity that is no longer worth believing. A version of church that is actually no longer worth expressing.
Wow.
And it needs to die. Because if it doesn't die, then there won't be something more beautiful birthed.
Yep.
And that can be really hard for the previous generation. That can be really hard for parents looking at their sons and their daughters and trying to figure out, oh, what's wrong with little Johnny? What's wrong with Brady?
Right.
What's wrong? And the truth is that God, however you want to call God, or life, or the universe, is inviting us into something deeper, more beautiful, more profound, more sacred. And it's going to look different. It's going to look a lot different. And we can't go backwards. So in the Protestant Reformation, the 1500s, and Martin Luther got up and he nailed his 95 theses to the wall, right? It probably was fair. Like, the grievances that he had towards the Catholic Church, like, we can look at him now and go, okay, that's a little messed up, that's a little messed up. Like, this is an abuse of power, right? But what happened in that moment is, even though I think it actually moved the narrative of Christianity forward, the problem is 500 years later, we're still nailing theses to the wall And we're still protesting. We're still dividing. So the fact is, what happened with Martin Luther is he disagreed and then had to, in some ways, divide. And that was actually helpful for the history of our movement. But 5 years later, we are still stuck in an agreement-based, belief-based religion. Yep. Not a way, not an expression like that of love that changes the world. I grew up with this basic idea that, hey, if you believed with these 5 things, and every church I went to said that these 5 things were different, right? One of them said, the inerrancy of the Bible, or the how you view the atonement, the cross, like the Trinity, end times. Like, I mean, you could throw just about anything in there, right? And if you disagreed, you were out. If you agreed, you were in. And we even made the afterlife, heaven and hell, about whether you agreed or whether you disagreed. Yeah. And we're still doing that because it's not a family, it's an agreement-based religion. Yeah. And the problem is, an agreement-based religion is a very low-level form of religion. Actually, it's a really low-level form of friendship. If you and I have to agree 100% to be friends, and the minute we disagree, we have to part ways, that is such an absurd idea. But we've transposed that onto this really sacred, holy thing, and we've put God on the top of it all. Yeah. And so we, as leaders in the church, they can say, well, this is what God agrees with. And if you disagree with God, you're out. If you're a homosexual, and the Bible, the holy word of God, says that homosexuality is a sin, you're going to hell, and we hate you, and we're going to banish you, because we've made God as small-minded and as evil as we are, as petty and as hurtful and as one who loves to punish. We think God loves to punish people as much as we love to punish people. But the truth is, the church has always, humanity, not just the church, the humanity has always had a hard time looking at their own shadow self, looking at their own darkness. And what the Jewish history did into even Christianity is we decided the way that we're going to deal with our own darkness is we're going to crucify others. We're going to throw stones. Yeah. And if we can kill them, then they won't force us to look in the mirror and see our own darkness. But the truth is also that if we took a minute to look at our own darkness, I think we'd actually find the gateway into the divine. There's I think it was one of the old mystics who said, both the fall and the recovery from the fall is the mercy of God. There comes a point in your life when you realize that all of your worth and value and goodness and everything you think is great about you came from the development of your ego. But there comes a point when the ego needs to be let go of. Yeah. And we actually transcend into something deeper, something truer. Something I think Paul talked about the spirit within, about the Christ within, about this way of existing in the world. This way that this man named Jesus from Nazareth actually introduced into the world. And he actually flipped an entire religion upside down. Yeah. Like, the way I understand it is Judaism wasn't necessarily a religion as it was a sort of a culture, sort of a people group. This had a long story. But it was a people group that had a lot of wrong ideas about God. And we have this man, this renegade, this reformer who comes on the scene and he says, you've heard it said for thousands of years, this thing, and your sacred texts and your holy books and all these things. He goes, but let me say to you, I say this. You've heard it said, but I say this. And he changed it. And he actually helped Judaism transcend into a higher level of consciousness. Yeah. And, but the problem was that people love religion. We love right and wrong. We love rules. We love black and white. We love to say you're in and you're out. Yeah. And after Jesus upended the system and we crucified him because the power struggle, the political regime and the religious regime couldn't handle the power, sort of that this young gun prophet is coming onto the scene and like developing all these followers. They had to take him out. Ambition in the heart of man is a wicked thing. They took him out, and then there was this band of young disciples who really did change the world. And then sort of the progression happens, and a few hundred years go by, and you have Constantine, and we decide we actually want priests and temples again. Want to politicize this beautiful way of life, and we decided to make Christianity. And I actually think that if Jesus was alive on the earth today, he would upend Christianity, the modern expression of Christianity, the same way he did with the understanding of Judaism in the first century. I think he would upend all the religious stuff we see today. The hard part is, there have been many people that will say, this is wrong. This is not how you do it. But who are going to be the ones that are going to actually exist in a way in the world that the world can't deny? People who transcend a belief system or an agreement-based religion into an expression that the world can't deny. People who actually decide to participate with this thing called the divine and to usher in a reality that's called heaven. Not something that we have to wait for, some afterlife experience that is based on how well you did or what you didn't do or what prayer you said, when you said it, all this kind of like weird mumbo jumbo. The truth is, like, who are going to be the burning and shining lamps that are actually going to change everything? And most of the time, those burning and shining lamps are the ones that actually have to live out in the wilderness until the world or the regular culture, what is acceptable, the status quo, will realize, oh, we missed it. We missed it. And the thing that's going to bring us there is probably great pain. You know, one of my favorite authors is a guy named Richard Rohr. And he says, we as humans are changed and transformed through means of great pain, means of great love, and ethnic experiences where we step outside our natural world and we begin to see through new eyes. The church would be helped if they actually got outside the church and met a few people that weren't like them.
Yeah.
That might change a few things. Actually changed things for me. When I went to a few different countries, and I began to see Buddhists and Hindus and Muslims and Christians and Jewish people, and I said, wow, these people are actually a lot more like me than they're unlike me. Yeah. They actually have hopes and dreams. They have kids and they have passion and they want the best for their children. And I went, how have I written off this whole group of people? It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. So I think what Jesus introduced on the earth was an expression or a way of life that changed everything. And we can do the same.